why do we have oxidative wines? How do they come about? What's the point of them? Well, a lot of things that we think of as being stylistic or desirable, of course, came out of necessity to start with. Back in the day, wines were often held for a long time. It took a long time to move wines around the market. Consumers, importers, collectors often bought wine in cask or barrels. So if you were living in London, for example, you might order wine from Portugal, and you might order it well in advance, pre-arrival, if you will, and it would be shipped, and it might take weeks or months in transit time before it came to you. So you were buying in quantity. Obviously, this was for people who could afford to do so. And those wines aged naturally. So that was just a practicality of the wine market. Also, winemaking today is, I can't overemphasize how much better the quality is of wine across the board than it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 300 years ago. There are all kinds of tools, chiefly sanitation and refrigeration, that people did not have access to, before modern day winemaking. So what that meant was that there were a lot of wines that maybe weren't standalone wines. So there was blending across vintages, blending across varieties. There were wines that maybe were too low or too high in alcohol, that perhaps had a stuck fermentation, didn't finish fermenting, high in acid, high in tannin. And you get these wines, you got to do something with them. So long aging time would often integrate and ameliorate the rough edges, let's say, of these wines. And that's how a lot of styles of wine have come about, just through necessity. So a wine that maybe was super rough, it simplifies it to say, but you might just toss it in barrel, blend with something better, wait, maybe you fortified it, maybe not. And that's another driver of these oxidative styles. Thirdly, there has historically in the wine world, of course, been a tradition of aging wine. We know that most wines are meant for immediate consumption, but there is still a traditional association of wine with long aging. And historically, the people who were drinking a lot of wine had palates that were appreciative of age characteristics in wine. We know today that the majority of American consumers, at least, prefer a more fruit-forward, youthful style. But that has not always been the case. That is a fairly recent development. And finally, once these styles developed, they were quite prestigious internationally. I'm talking about the classics, sherry, port, Madeira. There are others even that have fallen out of use, but those are the biggies. And those have been, for a long time, traded internationally and really prized. And at one time, fetched a lot of money. There are some, of course, very small. There's a small percentage of the market that still does, but those categories, unfortunately, have been declining for really the last 100 years. We can change that in this room, some committed citizens who want to drink more oxidative wine styles. But these are really the drivers of these styles and how they came to be.